All right, everybody, it's the first of the month. It's time to pay rent, renter's insurance, car insurance, Spotify, HBO Max, life insurance, medical insurance, 401k. Damn, what else? All right, everybody, welcome back to another video. Today's video is actually an update to a very old one I made, and that's a how-to on budgeting. With that video, it was actually at the onset of kind of my budgeting career. That's when I first started doing it. Before that, I used to memorize everything, as I'm sure a lot of people do, and often, we're okay with that. But as your finances get more complicated, if you have more income streams and certainly a lot more expenses, which everybody has as they get older, it's very important to really just be able to find a way to keep track of all of that. So that previous video, I'll go ahead and link it on screen. It's a decent watch if you want something to listen to in the background, but don't feel like you have to. It was very general, and I want to take the time to actually demo how to create a proper budget from scratch. Not necessarily scratch. I'm going to include a template. This is actually the budget that I use, minus a couple different complicated things that I removed just to simplify everything. And we're going to kind of walk through things together. But first off, I just wanted to really stress how important a budget is. It's a necessity, man. I know people that, again, they want to memorize everything, and I get it. I was right there with you. I think at the end of the day, it's very important to just motivate yourself to do this, because even if you just have many different expenses coming in, everybody, I feel like, falls into the trap of just letting money control you, right? If you don't write stuff down, if you don't figure out a system to really just track all this stuff and money in, money out, right? It's really going to hurt you in the long run, and you're not going to save as much as if you were to set some real goals and just manage that kind of dollar by dollar. It really just helps you make sure you don't overspend more than your means, especially if you use credit. So I know many people like myself, they never use cash and they never use their debit cards. And I know some people are kind of confused right now if you don't necessarily know too much about that. I will make a credit video later and the importance of using credit. But we use it to obviously accumulate points and get a little bit of cash back. And especially if you have some of those annual fee cards, if you're, obviously you've gotten to the point where you're fortunate enough to have one of those, it's just a great way to just get some perks, get some rewards, get things that honestly just really add a lot of value and essentially act as free stuff. You're just putting all your normal spending onto the card, right? And onto the credit card. So it's not like you're spending any more. You're not spending money you don't have. In most cases, that's what you should do. Often a lot of people don't track what they're actually spending, and they spend, I think it was 15 to 20% more. Don't quote me on that, but I know people generally do spend a little bit more on credit cards if you're not tracking exactly what you're spending. So it is a great way to alleviate that. It helps to remind you of what's coming up and what expenses to prioritize, which income streams are coming in, right? So you have enough income to actually cover those expenses before you go out and buy some random food, or if you go out and get the PS5, or before you indulge in kind of whatever you want to make sure you're able to cover your necessities and not necessarily not have enough at the end of the month or the beginning of the month, just because you've already spent all that money. And then finally, a budget's super important, just because you're able to log debt and really just create a payback plan. So if you do have a lot of debt, I know a lot of people do, even if it's not credit card debt, if it's student loans or card debt or anything like that, it's very important to have a plan, right? You can certainly do the minimum payments at first, but long term, unless you want to get stuck paying, I know loans can sometimes take 10 years or more, you definitely want a plan to be able to pay this stuff right away, because in the long run, that means less interest, less APR, right? And then you end up paying less in the long run. All right, so like I said, the template is below, the link is below. Please download it. Again, this video is primarily going to be a demo in terms of just how to create your budget from scratch. So just get some popcorn, get some water, go ahead and get on the computer, and let's go ahead and run through it together. All right, everybody. Well, welcome to the budget template. Once again, this is linked in the description below. This exact template is as you see it right now. I will include this, once again, if there's any issues downloading it or anything like that, just please reach out. I think it should be fine, but this is one of my first times actually sharing resources on YouTube, so I'm learning a little bit with you guys. But definitely grab some water, a snack, or something. definitely like try to have some of your bills and information kind of top of mind. Obviously, you follow along if you can. You'll get more value out of it if you don't already have a budget. You know, of course, just follow along, and we're gonna walk through some of my expenses and stuff like that. And obviously, we'll make up some pretend stuff. Um, we're gonna walk through this from beginning to end. We're gonna make up some pretend stuff, and then you can follow along on your end with actual expenses and income streams and things on your side. So of course, don't be afraid to like pause this video if you need to. Pause, take your time, make sure you're enter all the information correctly. But you'll notice there's a ton of references within this spreadsheet. So it'll do most of the work for you. You just have to enter like basic information and kind of know where everything is. And that's why having this video as a guide just to kind of explain my mindset will definitely help. So one thing worth noting is you do need a somewhat decent understanding of Excel, I would argue, just to use this template. Not necessarily to enter information, but I'm sure you're probably going to want to make a few changes on your end. You're going to want to change stuff around, maybe change either the look or add additional tables or things based on kind of what your situation looks like. I strongly believe that everything is customizable in here, and I've changed it a couple times over the course of my college career myself. So I would definitely recommend having a decent, like, just basic knowledge of Excel and how to use this. Should anything go wrong or if you need to fix something, it'll definitely come in handy. But for the sake of just following this, you should be fine without any like crazy knowledge or advanced knowledge or anything like that. But let's go ahead and get right into it. The order is definitely like something that like I'm used to seeing. So if things get a little confusing, if you want to move tables around, kind of go ahead and do so, and then come back to the video. If this order doesn't necessarily work for you and you have a different way you want to arrange this. But the first thing, so this is essentially my budget spreadsheet that I use every single week. Every week I sit down and I look at my finances. I'm like, hey, okay, we got to track expenses, for the week, or depending on how you want to do it, you can do it up to the next paycheck. I usually do it per a week, sometimes up to the next paycheck if I have some big expenses or anything like that. But for the sake of this, we're going to assume that we're doing it for the week of, right? And then you're going to do it again the next week and again the next week. And eventually you get so fast at this, you can do this in like 5 minutes. And it's just super helpful. But initially setting it up is definitely take a little bit of time. First thing I always do is I always like to track money that's actually owed to me in this little table right here, and usually not too much. I don't lend out money super easily, right? Like the person definitely needs to have my trust, or if we go out to dinner, like things like that, I'll track it here as well. But outside of that, I don't really hand out money like just readily and too crazily, and I'm sure many of you don't either. So this is usually blank for me, but generally you would want to enter the person or entity like that owes you money. Say if you're getting a refund from something like Amazon or something, the amount, and then finally, I would always like to leave a reminder of kind of what it was. So in this case, a dinner bill for this example, right? So we can say maybe this person owed like $2, right? And you'll notice the total will actually populate itself, and we'll get to why that's important later. So I always like to start with that. And then I like to go to our money I owe column. And I made this table huge because I know people have different circumstances and tons of different loans or credit cards or things that they need to pay off. So whether you owe money to a specific person, you owe credit card bills, or you owe like a student loan or something like that, I always like to include that information here. So we're going to do a little example right now. Say like Discover card, right? We owe about like, let's say like $200 on that. And then the notes column is just really for you. I like to do like payback order if I owe balances on multiple credit cards, which one has the higher APR. I like to log APRs too. You might have to do a little bit of research, but generally like having different cards with different APRs listed on here, your loans and all that stuff, it helps you determine which one to obviously pay off first. If it has a higher APR, you want to pay that card off first. If you usually pay your balances right away and you don't really accumulate interest, then this won't matter as much for you. So I like to take, if I do have a balance and I have some interest and stuff accumulating, I like to keep track of like pay orders. So if say we have like two cards, like we have a Chase card, like Chase Freedom, right? And we owe like 300 on that, and that has an APR of say like 23.99. It's a little bit higher, so we want to pay this one first. So I just leave a note here, pay first, and then for this one, like pay second, right? Because it has the lower APR. And then one other thing, if you are paying it like minimum payments, you can't afford to pay off the whole balance or something like that, you can leave, say the minimum payment amount. Obviously, you have to keep checking this every single week, right? Which you should be doing anyway, regardless. So say you owe maybe 25 on like February 15th on this card, and then you owe maybe 35 on say February 6th on this card. So very important, obviously, to just keep track of that stuff. You can, of course, include things like, again, student loans. You can include like you owe money to, say, like Joe for dinner. And it's just you can do a lot with this stuff. So obviously for things like this, you don't need all these columns and stuff, so you can just not worry about it. But it's cool. It's a great way to track money you owe as your finances get more complex. It's a great way to also just track your payback progress towards some cards that you may have like quite a bit of a balance on and things like that. So it'll total up down here. You're gonna get the full total, and then you're gonna get a total of you're actually gonna get a total of minimum payments or whatever you're expecting to pay come this date, just so you can kind of have that in mind, right? Peace of mind, and it's super helpful. So those are the first two things I always like to do. This, you'll notice, is actually your main budget table. This is what you care about every single week. This is how you're gonna track your income to expense essentially ratio every single week. But this is the last thing we're gonna do in this tutorial, only because you need everything else filled out in order to do this. But generally, this is where I would go next. I would do money owed to me, money I owe to others, and then I would track my finances for the week, because generally all these other tables are already filled out. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're actually going to fill everything else out first. So let's jump over to our subscriptions. So we're going to have monthly and annual subscriptions. And I apologize, I can't fit both on the screen. So I'm going to start with monthly. And both of these are relatively the same. It's exactly what you would think. These are bills, subscriptions, things you have due on a specific date. So say you have rent, right? And that's going to cost maybe in total, like I like to do rent, utilities, like parking, everything together, but you can certainly separate it if you want. So that'll be maybe that, for example, and then we can choose like the date that we have that we're actually charged on, and then the renew cancel by. So this column, actually, I will be honest, you're rarely going to use. I have this here for like special circumstances. Say if you have like Wi-Fi bill, right? And then the Wi-Fi, let's just say that's like $34.99, and then I would leave yes, they would charge me on say like the 27th, but I would also say on my own budget, I'd say 4/4/2022 as a renew cancel by date, because this is when the contract actually renews. This is when they're gonna increase my bill. So by this date, I kind of want to reevaluate whether I want to choose another provider or just continue on, maybe choose another plan, call them to re-up the contract for the same price, right? Sometimes it's important to keep that in mind, but something like rent, we don't need to worry about this column, so just NA. They charge the same thing, generally, obviously on the same exact day, and that's the case with most subscriptions. So I always like to also keep track of which card that I'm using for specific circumstances. So in this case, rent, for example, we'd be using, say, like, usually you're using your checking account, so I would, in my case, Chase debit. The Wi-Fi bill, sometimes I put that on, on different cards. I should put certain things on certain cards for like points and stuff like that, but we just use that as an example. And then notes, again, is just for those special circumstances, bill increases to watch out for, anything like that you want to keep track of over time. So you could just keep referencing those notes every week or every month, however you want to look at it. From here, go ahead and take some time and enter all the expenses that you're expecting, like for the month. As an example, again, this is a good place to start. You might want to consider things like your phone bill, you pay for any other services like Spotify or monthly kind of like streaming subscriptions or anything like that. Obviously like student loan payments, and these are your actual payments per month, while that money that you owe tables for like the entire balance, and you can either choose to use this section to log what you owe per month, but you also want to log it in here, and I'll kind of explain why, because it'll total up your monthly kind of expenses, and that's like super important when you do your monthly budget. So just like obviously consider your student loans or any other loans that you have, like car payment, insurance, any insurance payments you're making outside of your paycheck. So like renter's insurance, for example, you probably have any storage like iCloud or anything like that, life insurance. These are things that I have on my own budget. So just some ideas to kind of start with, and everybody's circumstance looks a little different. So similar concept for annual kind of annual expenses. Again, similar concept. We are going to start with the things that you would owe annually. These are things that obviously they charge you once a year, and then you want to log that charge. So for many people, you have your car insurance payment, right? For myself, that's $692, which is ridiculous, but as a young guy, you got to deal with it. And then also you want the date that they're going to charge you. In this case, the charged on date versus the renew cancel by date, honestly are pretty much exactly the same. I keep these two columns separate specifically because some of these like annual subscriptions, they just charge you on the same exact date every single year. Some of these you actually have to manually go in and like renew. For example, things like they don't necessarily charge you on an exact date. Things like buying new glasses, that's probably the best example I could think of. That's why I personally created this column, because they don't really, you want to maybe just create like a date, like an average date when you expect to get new glasses, just so those expenses are coming up, right? So you'll be spending a certain amount around that specific day. So we could say like June 15th, and it doesn't have to be a particular year, but I like to leave the year as well. But going back to the car insurance again, in this case, we don't really care about this column, but the charged on date, they charge us, say like on the 15th, twice a year. Put a little and symbol in there just to make it easier to read. And then same thing, the same thing with the cards. Of course, you choose which card you're using. This can be NA because you can choose to pay for your glasses however you want. It really depends. And then notes, again, same thing, special circumstances, any bill increases to watch out for. I know, like, I have Disney Plus personally, and they increased their bill. They sent me an email, like, literally, like, I think it was like 8 to 9 months before renewal, saying that they're going to up the charge next year. So obviously, I know I'm going to forget that in 8 to 9 months. So I leave a note here just so I remember when it comes time to pay. Now you may ask, okay, Mohit, these tables are great, but I really don't want to keep looking through all these dates to remember. Okay, like for monthly, it's easy. They charge you every single month. You know that these charges are coming. For annual though, you only need to worry about these items once a year. So it's a great idea to prioritize which ones you really will just care about. So which ones to expect. So say you have a car insurance payment coming on 11/15. You have glasses, that you need to buy on June 15th, right? But you also have, say, like Microsoft Office. Maybe you pay for Microsoft Office every year. It's something that I use personally. Very great product, $75. And they say, let's pretend they charge me on 3/12/22, right? So this charge is coming first, right? You don't have to worry about these two. You probably don't want to look at them or really care to read these throughout the year, but you want an easy visual way to just remember to focus on this one. So maybe you could just change the color, for example, of the entire row. Or what I do is I just like to change the color of the box right next to it. So it's very distinguishable now. This is the only row that I care about. So I'll know to every time I look at this, every time I do my budget every single week, you'll know that the next annual charge that you're expecting is this Microsoft Office charge. And then you don't really have to care to read any of this until you pay this first. Once you pay this, you can go ahead and change it to the next available charge. So you can change this color back, and then you can mark this as the next charge that you are going to have to worry about. So it's just a nice, helpful visual cue. Not everybody cares about that, but I find it helpful. And then also in the monthly subscription circumstance could be helpful for charges you want to reevaluate, right? Say like this Wi-Fi bill on that specific date because there might be a bill increase, so you want to watch for that. So it's just again a nice little visual cue. So before we finish up this column right here, I'm not necessarily going to demonstrate it because it's pretty simple. But I left some notes in all of these columns, so it should be very easy for you to fill out. Go ahead and pause, take some time to just log all your different cards, your accounts. If you have, Bitcoin or if you have Coinbase or investments or really anything, you want to log every single account that you have. As well as any legal cards or anything like that. So you just know what's coming. You know like which cards are that you have that are active. Obviously, you can delete them if you close those accounts out. You can log annual fees. I personally right now don't have any cards with annual fees, but I created this because I'm expecting to get one in the near future. So it's just helpful to remember to pay those. And then finally, your expiration dates, for your driver's license, certain cards, etc. There's very good ways to remember which cards you have, when they're going to expire, etc., without having to manually go look at all of them. So that's every single table on this sheet. I know it's a lot, and I promise you, once you really just like fill all this out and you start, going through your budget every single week, it really just becomes super easy, and you can just look through this and you'll know where everything is. So now in terms of what I do every week, again, I start with my money owed, like both to myself and then what I owe to others. But then from there, I want to see, okay, what money do I have right now? What do I have to pay between now and next weekend, right? And then what leftover money do I have to kind of do whatever I want with, whether that's miscellaneous spending, going out money, right? Or just generally paying off more loan payments, or investing in something, right? So it's just a nice way to just like, this is the actual budget part of the budget. So ignore the safety balance column for now. We will get to that in just a second here. But weekly, I like to go in and I like to include how much I have on any checking accounts that you have. So I just have the one. So let's say we have like $3,000 saved up right now. You'll notice the total is already going to auto-populate and did all the work for you. Your credit card balance has already populated in here. This is a great way to see how much income you currently have versus your entire balance. Say if you had I'm gonna undo this and change this back, but say you have $4,000 in credit card debt. Now you can see you have a negative kind of net worth here of $998, which is not, now you know exactly how much more you need to make, right, in order to fully be debt free. So it's just a very helpful method. Subscription total, this is where you're going to add up any subscriptions that you know are coming up for a particular week. So say, and we're not going to include any, we're just going to put some random prices in here, right, for the sake of demonstration. So let's just pretend all these are charges that are coming up. So say we have a chart, we have this Spotify, car payment, and phone, let's say phone bill, all charging me within the same week, right? So what we want to do is we want to click into here. Don't delete this because it actually it turns this entire total into a negative just to make the total easy to read. But you can just go ahead and click phone bill, car payment, and Spotify. You can add them all together and then boom, this is how much you owe between now to next weekend. These are the charges you can expect. I'll quickly maybe glance over at your annual subscription. Remember that, again, we already marked out which one's coming next, which is, in this case, glasses, right? We don't have to worry about that until June, so don't worry about any annual subscriptions that are coming up. We have just a couple more rows left. Notice the money owed to you actually auto-populates, so you can choose to delete this or not if you want. I like to see what money is coming outside of just my income sources, so any money that's owed to me as well. I like to see that that's coming, but I know some people just want to see the money that they have now in their bank accounts, so that's totally fine. You can delete that column or that row specifically if you want. But your upcoming expenses, how is this different from your monthly? These expenses, and this is actually the very last table that you might be wondering why I didn't explain, because it's a really simple table. It's not overly complicated. It's not a monthly expense. It's not an annual expense. These are just additional things that could potentially charge you or that you'll be buying soon that aren't always scheduled. So things like tollways, sometimes you set up an account, they'll automatically charge you when you pass a toll. Auto ink cartridges, if you're running low, they automatically send you new ones. Groceries that you can expect to spend, gas money, etc. So you can leave the name of that item and then the amount and then just any additional notes that you expect. I like to use this just for, again, some of those irregular expenses. So if I know I have to pay like maybe gas this week, if I'm running low on gas and I'm going to have like maybe a little bit higher of a grocery bill, or I have like something coming up this week, you can totally just like link some of those items for that particular week. And actually we should put like a couple of charges in there. And then it'll be exactly what you think, minus the equal sign. Those charges will also be taken out, and you'll know to expect them. So, and then if you're getting paid this week, I just like to like to do this just so again I know what's coming. You don't necessarily have to, but say you're getting about 2,500 in your paycheck coming later this week. So it's just a handy way to track. And by the end of the week, this is exactly how much you should have, unless you buy anything else or change anything. Once you pay all your debt, pay your subscriptions for the week, any additional expenses, and get your paycheck for the week, as well as any money owed to you, this is exactly what you're going to have. This is your current net worth, minus just uncomplicated net worth is solely just your expenses versus current income. And I really love this, and this is why I do this every single week, just to track what I have. If you have debt, this is going to show you what you owe, and it's just a nice, handy way to do your finances and know what to expect every single week. All right, so two quick last things. The safety balance column, incredibly helpful. Don't worry about, so I blocked these off because they're not as relevant, but these rows, great way to see how much money you should be keeping in your bank account at minimum before you start spending on any miscellaneous things or making extra payments or doing anything like that. So for this first one, this isn't necessarily your full checking balance. I like to keep, say, like $200 as a safety in case anything happens, or I'm young, so I don't really have any like big emergencies or anything like that. This is separate from your emergency fund. This is solely just a week by week emergency budget if you have any miscellaneous things that you absolutely have to pay for off of that checking account. And then your credit card balance, you'll notice that this didn't auto-populate like your subscriptions for the week and expenses for the week. That's because this, remember, is again just your total credit card balance. It's not necessarily due that week. Instead, this is linked to the total of your minimum payments column. So anything due for that anything that's coming up that's going to be due, like at minimum, right? So you don't miss a payment. You need $275 to keep at an absolute minimum in your bank account, just as a safety for all upcoming expenses, anything for the week. And then the leftover money, again, you can go ahead and spend on whatever you want, or you can put in a savings account, you can add to your retirement account, you can do anything with. So I just like doing this as well every week. It takes like 30 extra seconds once you do it enough, and it's just a nice, helpful way to look at things. The very last thing is, finally, you'll realize, especially at the beginning, that it's kind of, you don't want to watch this video every single week to remember what to kind of click and do on this budget. So it might be helpful to create like a to-do list, right? So maybe fill out money owed to me, money I owe to others, budget table, safety balance. It's just a nice little to-do list. You remember which order to go in. This is also a great place to log any goals you have for the week. So maybe pay off, discover, because you're getting paid. You'll be able to pay off the full balance. Or monthly goals, right? Pay off all credit card debt, make 25% of all loan payments. It's just good places to log any to-do items, goals, etc. that you want to make sure you're following every single week, or just to glance at. So again, this is essentially how I do my budget every week. It's in my mind, eventually, It gets very simple, and this is it. I still think an easy way to lay everything out where you still have all the information you need. It's not too simple where you're just ignoring key pieces of information that you have to look at, but it's not overly complex, right? And obviously, this doesn't account for, obviously every situation, and of course, if you're a high net worth individual, you probably aren't doing your own budget, and you might have more income streams and income sources coming in. So things can get complicated there. But when it comes to just like a very, very, just like straight out of college, you have a basic, a normal job, you have normal expenses, like this budget for most people will definitely do it. And I hope this helped and provided a little bit of value to you guys. Anyways, y'all, that's the video. Leave some comments. Let me know what you think. Let's really smash that like button. I'm still literally reading this conclusion script because there's so much stuff that YouTubers say at the end of the video. It's so hard to remember this stuff, and I haven't made a video in like 2 years, so definitely apologize. Let's get this video trending higher than most people's credit card debt. Please subscribe if even a fraction of my videos resonate with you, and I'll see everybody in the next one. Peace out.